Well, new polling finds a majority of Americans, including those who identify as so-called pro-choice, support significant restrictions on abortion. The survey, conducted by the Marist College Institute for Public Opinion and sponsored by the Knights of Columbus, indicates that 3 out of 4 Americans, or 76%, believe that significant restrictions, even beyond those presently existing, should be placed on abortion here in the United States. Joining me now on Skype is Tim Saccoccia, Senior Policy Director for the Knights of Columbus. Tim, welcome. So good to have you on. Thanks for joining us. The latest polling indicates a great deal of consensus when it comes to Americans' opinions on abortion across political parties and faith backgrounds, even among those who identify as so-called pro-choice, that is, that there needs to be restraint. Can we talk a little bit more about that?
Well, sure, and thank you for having me. And that is, and it's a consistent result that we found over the past decade of doing this poll with the Marist Institute. This year, like you said, we found 76% of Americans think that abortion should be limited to, at most, the first 3 months of pregnancy. And this includes a bipartisan majority, Republicans, Democrats, over 80% of independents, and like you said, pro-choice Americans as well. And so this isn't a one-off instance. This is a consistent result that we found, and we think that this consensus shows an area for possible unity on this issue as well.
Yeah. Tim, let's talk about funding for a minute. The poll found that 58% of Americans oppose or strongly oppose using tax dollars to pay for a woman's abortion. 77% of Americans oppose or strongly oppose using the tax dollars to support abortions in other countries. So, Tim, what's the takeaway there for lawmakers who are really pushing policies to the contrary?
Well, again, here's another great consistent result that we've seen. I think that, when most Americans are asked if they're pro-life or pro-choice, we don't get a very good answer. I mean, even in our own poll over a decade, the number has gone back and forth and changed quite a bit. But when we're asking these more nuanced questions, we see that Americans have this pro-life bend in them. They don't. The long tradition we've had since the 70s of having the Hyde Amendment and not using taxpayer or funding domestically, and of course the Mexico City policy, which blocks funding internationally, which was rescinded this week, unfortunately. And so I think like I said, I think the area for unity in this divisive issue of abortion is here in these areas that we found in the poll, and I really hope that policymakers do see this and do take action.
Yeah, for sure. Events like today's March for Life certainly make clear the overwhelming support, too, that exists here in the U.S. for building a culture of life. We know that. How important is that we continue to do that?
I think it's vital, and I was very lucky to be one of the few people who marched today in the Scaled Back March for Life. And I can tell you that the spirit is very much alive in the pro-life movement and in that group that was down there today at the mall and going over to the Supreme Court. It may have just been a small group, but I think I know we represent tens of millions, and the polling shows we represent maybe even more than that. And so I think events like the march, events that we see in the states and the state marches that are happening more and more, and even in our local communities, are vital to send the signal that these areas do have areas of unity and consensus, and that they can be seen when folks are peacefully demonstrating on it.
Tim, as we know, the march took on a different look this year. You mentioned you were there. If you don't mind, quickly, give us your thoughts on the atmosphere there today.
Well, it was everyone is still very optimistic and wants to work to advance a culture of life. Jeannie Mancini, the head of the March for Life, started us out before we started marching, and she reminded us of everything we need to do with the hope that next year we'll be back to having tens and hundreds of thousands of marching with us and have a much more joyful and boisterous atmosphere that we usually have. Today was a little bit more somber. People were using the opportunity to pray and to reflect, especially as we went through a city that is is going through a lot more security. We marched around the fence lines. But I will also say that the police were out, and they were incredibly helpful and really good to collaborate with, and really made sure everyone felt safe and could march. So I think it was a really good day for life.
Yeah, absolutely. Tim, thank you so much for sharing that with us, and thank you so much for being with us. Tim Saccoccia, Senior Policy Director for the Knights of Columbus. Thanks again.
Thank you.